The Tanzanian election seems to be over. The incumbent president has won re-election for another 5 years, and a script that's becoming so familiar across the continent. The opposition are crying foul and suggesting that it was irregular. And the lead up to these elections, also question marks raised. And then on the one side, you have the electoral observers perhaps giving it their blessing. Human rights groups saying that it wasn't so fair into the lead up. And as I say, this seems to be a script that plays itself out time and time again. Well, to discuss perhaps a reimagined Africa, providing African solutions to African problems, we're now joined by three people who feel that they have a new way, a new path. And we'll be joined by Hannington Mubaiwa, Samantha Kandake, who the President and Vice President of the Rapid Africa Plan Board. And we also have the Director of the African Institute of Leadership and Governance, Dr. Emmanuel Nkhoma. To all of you, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Mubaiwa, partly because your years of work and desire gave birth to this Rapid Africa Plan. But before that, I just want to get comments from you and the panelists about the Tanzanian elections. And just as I was introducing it, it sounds like a script we face all the time. The incumbent wins, the opposition complain, the African Union say all things were fine, human rights groups and other groups say that it wasn't fine, particularly in the lead up to the election. Your thoughts on what's played out in Tanzania? Let me start with you, Mr. Mubaiwa.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Peter Ndoro. This is not new like you just mentioned, but, having studied, for over 5 years, what's wrong with Africa and what can be done to fix it, I realized that the democratic model that we have, where you get a group of people, they fail, then you put another group of people, they fail, then you put exactly the same, group of people again. It's out of date. It's out of date in Africa. It's out of date in Europe. It's the nature of the model itself. It doesn't serve us. Will never serve us. It divides the people in two. It's a bad model.
All right, Samantha Kandake, your thoughts. You are someone who's been observing the continent from as far afield as the US, and it's a country that has a lot of migrants from the continent. Is this another one of those chapters, even if he's won, but the script seems familiar?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Professor Mubaiwa. There seems to be a pattern of where people get excited about a candidate makes promises, the people get disappointed by that same candidate after they've come in office. And then the people, that cycle repeats itself. The system is really inherently broken. And that's why we are very excited about the Rapid Africa Plan, because it seeks to take a system that's broken and create a new system that works for everyone.
All right, and then my last guest, your thoughts about the Tanzanian election, Dr. Nkhoma?
Yeah, first and foremost, we at the African Institute of Leadership and Governance, we've been watching very close the elections that have been going on in the continent. And one of the things that we had to do is not just to watch, but some of our people from the Institute who are based in Tanzania had to give us a number of reports. Even before I got into this program, one of my our people who is right there in Tanzania giving us a report to say Pombe Magufuli has now been declared as the winner, and Lisulu has also Lissu has also declared himself that this has been considered with fraud. Now, this is a narrative that Africa always have. But most of the Tanzanians know that at a time as this, Africa need to begin to mature. Africa need to begin to change its dynamics of governance and democracy. So we at the African Institute of Leadership and Governance would wish to congratulate the winner of the elections. I would love to congratulate John Pombe Magufuli for being an African of goodwill. I believe there has been a number of positive things that Pombe Magufuli had done in his past 5 years. But
All right, it looks as if that his signal is breaking there. We'll try and get him again. We're going to move on to other things just now, but again, I want to revisit, just chat a little bit more about the Tanzanian election because it's so important. And this comes after the elections in Guinea, Mr. Mubaiwa, where the Guinean opposition again also said that this was not correct. We have got the Ivory Coast election coming up this weekend, and already what we're seeing is the opposition saying the current president, Alassane Ouattara, should not be running for a third term. They're calling for a boycott, and we've got people leaving Abidjan scared that they might see scenes similar to the civil war. So Tanzania, in the lead up to this election, we were hearing about intimidation, we were hearing about the press being muzzled, freedom of expression being compromised. With this kind of thing going on, how much weight can we put onto this election and its value?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, it's not an easy thing to put in black and white because there are many dynamics that we may be aware of or may be aware of. But, you know, I think from an African development point of view, you know, based on the intent that, you know, the society has for its governments, and we are now looking towards, you know, Africa uniting and working together, what we have here, we can
All right, okay, so we're having challenges with the lines there, but there we are seeing scenes of President Magufuli winning the presidential election, and it looks like it's a landslide win as well. A little bit earlier on this evening, they were talking about over 80% of the votes being won by John Magufuli, and in theory, these results could take up to 5 days to return, but so big was his margin of victory and his win that they've been able to declare the results early. And so John Magufuli gets another 5 years as the president of Tanzania, and his party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, has been the ruling party in the country since 1961. And again, another trend on the continent where the party at independence often continues to be the ruling party of each country. All right, Mr. Mubaiwa, you were busy sharing your thoughts about these things are not very easy, they're quite complex, and perhaps this is why a new way is required.
I mean, because the thing is this, either way, you know, these systems, whether someone wins with a, you know, with a landslide or not, there's no guarantee, and there's never been a guarantee that Africa or the countries themselves are going to give people, you know, what they intended in the first place. In other words, the system, it doesn't matter which country it is, in all the African countries, this model of government, this model of electioneering or, you know, putting someone in power based on politicking does not work, has never worked. And now it's time to realize that this is an old paradigm. It's an old, the thinking that put these governments or these systems in place is now out of date, does not work, cannot give us the results that we want. And it's time for us to go into a new paradigm, because that is the science. When the old paradigm doesn't work, you go into a new paradigm, and God always raises an individual or a few people with an insight into the future and build a new future.
And
it's time for us to build a new future.
And this is where you came up with this idea of this Rapid Africa plan. Tell us about its genesis and what you hope it will do.
Well, I landed in America 20 years ago at the age of 43, and I said to myself, why am I here? What am I doing? I just started to learn to make money or to make a profit in my business. I was doing construction, and I just finished 3,000 houses, and all of a sudden, a minister wakes up and say, I'm cutting the contracts for the other 3 years that we had. And then I ended up in America, and I said, if someone has not found a way to transform Africa by 2012, I'll go full time in 2013 and with the thesis, what is wrong with Africa and what can be done to fix it. So I went full time, 5 years. Within 5 years, I realized that we don't have a plan. That's the key issue. We don't have a plan because it takes a vision, it takes a plan, it takes a strategy and working the plan. So we didn't have those, and till today we don't have it. So it took me 8 years altogether, and I put together a manual. There's the Riot Act, the African Master Reset, and in the middle it says the Rapid Africa Plan, the fast track modernization of Africa. This is a letter to our youth, because we have failed them as parents. This generation, we have failed to take Africa from the colonialists. They're still 100% in Africa, and we have sold Africa to China. And so I took the burden upon myself to help our kids leave them at least something that could map their future. So I left them this manual, and that's how I ended up designing the Rapid Africa Plan, which I was in Africa in 2018 to test it, and it had, people accepted it with a lot of excitement, but I realized that it was difficult to preach, by my mouth. The best thing is, as we say in my culture, we say, send it who is not ashamed, who does not shy, which is a letter. So I wrote the letter, which is the book, and for a focal point. So the Rapid Africa Plan was a realization that at the Africa Union, there's no plan. The Chinese have got a very, very specific, very definite, very expansive plan. The Europeans are fumbling to try to get a plan and compete with the Chinese, but Africans don't have a plan. And then the Africa Union itself is run by the Europeans through the United Nations and China. So Africa really, where we are, has been colonized. And the Rapid Africa Plan is here to change that narrative and recalibrate the African process so that we can leave our children a plan that can transform Africa from a third world continent to a developed continent within 40 years, making Africa a leading continent by 2063. And this is a means to fulfill the Agenda 2063.
Samantha Kandake, thanks for joining us. I just wonder, the African Union is organized, it has a place where it sits, and it's very well represented on the continent. Why is it, do you think, that they haven't been able to do the things that you're hoping to do, and how will your plan work as a continental plan?
Well, that's a very good question. When it comes to, when you think about our history, and you would think about our ancestors, our great ancestors, such as Kwame Nkrumah and Marcus Garvey, one of the things that they insisted on is that Africa become united. And they understood that our strength is in our numbers and us coming together and being as one. The African Union, as Professor Mubaiwa just mentioned, you can see that there's not a definite plan. And when you see the things that are supposed to roll out not being rolled out, you know that there is an agenda behind it that's not working. It's not working for Africa. We have to think Africa for Africans. This plan will unite all the people industrially under one model. And what it would do within 5 years is going to unite the people together. Then it's going to roll out industrially all of the African countries at one time. And think of Africa as Africa mega business. We have so many resources in Africa. However, we don't have control of our own resources. This plan seeks to put resources in the hands of entrepreneurs and business people, because governments don't grow the economy. It's businesses that do. And so being also conscious of culture, being uniquely African to ourselves is also a big part of that. And it does not include foreign countries telling us what to do and them taking advantage of us. But we have to come together as a continent and in the diaspora.
All right, Dr. Nkhoma, perhaps I can come to you now, and I'm just wondering how we are going to do that, because each country has its own internal problems in terms of unity. How do we jump from a micro problems in terms of unity to now having a unified continent pulling in the same direction? We are losing billions in terms of things like corruption and political parties wanting to stay in power at all costs to the detriment of its own people. How on earth do we unite this continent so that we can even start to do the work of industrializing at the rate that Ms. Kandake is talking about?
Yeah, it is first and foremost that let me begin from the question that came also in relation with the African Union. When you look at the founders of the African Union, before it was called the African Union, it was the Organization of African Unity. Now, when you look at their motive was truly to bring Africa as one, united in its diversity. Now, at this particular moment, we have to look at what are the areas where the African Union has failed. And we at the African Institute of Leadership and Governance have paid a close attention to begin to look at which areas has the AU failed and which areas has the AU succeeded. One of the things that the AU has succeeded is that it has brought the elite to themselves, who are elected every 5 years, who are called presidents, or who are called ambassadors, or who are called government workers, in other words, so to say. Now, when you look at politicians, it is not always true to say politicians are leaders. Why? Because most of the politicians we have in positions of power and authority are not leaders. These others have become leaders by what we call in our school accidental leadership. And when you look at Africa's problems, let's start from the micro problems that you have mentioned. The micro problems that can be alluded to issues of tribalism. Here in Africa, we look at Kenya. We discovered that in Kenya, there is always a fight between the Kikuyus, and you find that the Kikuyus are fighting the Merus are fighting the Maasai, and they are always having those kind of troubles. The same thing when you look at Zambia, for example. You discover that Zambia, right now, they have had a challenge where they are speaking about the current president being from the Eastern Province and the opposition being from the Southern Province and the ones from the Eastern Province. I was listening to the Minister of Information of Zambia, Honorable Dora Silia, addressing the people.
And she was pleading on her knees in her constituency, asking people to vote for their party because the president comes from that area. Now, those are the dynamics. The same thing, if you look at Zimbabwe, you discover that we have had challenges where the Shonas want to govern and they don't want the Ndebelés to come into power. The same thing with South Africa. You will remember that South Africa has got what we call the X factor, the Z factor, the N factor, and all these factors, they are dynamics that brings division. But something that we need to recognize here is that these divisions have been propelled by people who have got ill motives over Africa. Most of the time, the imperialists, those that divided us in borders, they divided us in languages. They gave us foreign languages to speak. You discover that that's the root cause. So firstly, let's begin to deal with the root cause. Then secondary, let's begin to look at the issues of how do we then build an Africa that is united. Firstly, we need to change the governance system. Let the governance system be inclusive. The AU is not supposed to be for the elite. Because when you look at these guys called the politicians today who go into the AU, and after 5 years, in other countries, 4 years, you change the president. And in other countries, you even change the political party. So it simply means that when the new political party goes to the AU, they have to propel their political party agenda. So political party systems and structures have contributed to the dividing of Africa. So in order for us to begin to unite, firstly, we need to begin from the grassroots. And what are the grassroots? We need to re-educate ourselves. So the Rapid Africa Plan is here to help us re-educate Africa. Let's redefine our worth. Let's not our worth be defined by the powers that are outside this continent. Then the next thing, we can begin to appreciate the economy, where we need to begin to say, how do we create the African economy? Let me summarize this question, this answer in this way. Education has played a vital role in corrupting the mind of an African. You discover that an African is able to appreciate the Harvard University more than they will appreciate the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We discover that an African is appreciating Oxford University more than he will appreciate the University of Nairobi. We discover that an African is appreciating the University of Yale more than they will appreciate the University of Botswana. Yet we ourselves as Africans can begin to re-educate ourselves, begin to teach ourselves the history that is relevant to us. Let's begin to develop the economy. How do we do that? It's when we introduce ethical leadership on those that are elected. Because the problem that we have in Africa, we've got what we call accidental leaders as our presidents, accidental leaders as our mayors, accidental leaders as our governors. That is why we have got thieves in government.
Prof, I'm hearing the plan, I'm hearing the ideas, and I'm just wondering, though, how it can be actualized, because part of Africa's challenge has always been actualizing the plans that we come up with, and we do have great plans, but somehow never quite get off the ground. Why will this one work?
Well, first of all, we have to realize that it is God that frees the people. And everything that happens, especially in Africa, we are spiritual people. So God has decided that this is the time. And number one, that settles it, for those that understand the way God works. But from the mechanical academic people, I want to say that, first of all, it takes a clear vision of what needs to be accomplished. And before you talk about the vision, there has to be someone that has a consciousness of the complex maze of the issues that are happening and how these issues when you see a new future. What can be done to drive it? What can be done to create the strategies? Now, one of the key elements that is unique with the Rapid Africa Plan is this thing that we call the strategic map or the transformational strategic architecture. Before you even a leader talks about transforming Africa or any organization or any country, first of all, look at a vision as a bridge that will take you to a new Africa. Now, that bridge must have a means to achieve it. How much capital do we need to start with in Africa? And how much capital can support the modernization of Africa? This alone, in itself, all the plans that have been on Africa have failed to conceptualize a means, a new capital system. And I was able, by studying how the other nations have packaged their financial and capital programs, even the Arab countries, they start with a seed fund, and that seed fund, when a nation then rebrands themselves and show the world that the finance people that they are serious. You see,
right, so where's the money going to come from, and how much is needed to modernize the continent?
Well, the thing is this, that the Africans governments today, they can't do what needs to do. You know why? Because they are straitjacketed by a model of bringing finance through the foreign governments. Now, there are trillions and trillions of dollars on the free market. In 2016, in America alone, at the stock exchange, they made about $4 trillion that was floating. What you do is you package a project. That's why we call this Africa mega business. You package the project and you create, it must have ownership. So we are here to the end. For me, I'm going to live to be 110 years of age, so the finance people don't have to worry about that. So, and then you need to deal with the credibility and predictability issue, the issue of corruption. Many people think that you have to deal with that first. But in organizational science and practice, you can't tell someone not to be corrupt because they are corrupt from the inside. So what you do is you create a new vision, a more powerful vision. Then you teach the people the merits to go to a new place, the merits to follow a new vision. And in any case, in the transformation, in the change science, there has to be this understanding that there's need to change, and then have a vision and rally the people behind this vision. This is what we are doing. We're rallying the people behind the vision. And the other thing also is that there's a means, there's the ethical code, the predictability and credibility, and then the right strategic plan. We are saying Africa needs to be reset to its organic state. It needs to be reset from the beginning, as if we have dropped from Mars as a nation, and as if other people don't exist. And the book, The Riot Act, means that we are reading the Riot Act. We are telling every person, every system, every nation that enough is enough. Africa is for Africans. We have already pressed the reset button. As far as we are concerned, we're now driving the design of the concepts of a united Africa and the institutions of a united Africa, which doesn't exist today, which the African Union, yes, the free trade area, it has been able to do that. But from an industrialization point of view, they've been kicking the can every 10 years down the road.
All right. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna move us on because we're running out of time. Dr. Nkhoma, I'm just wondering, how do we do this without the leaders? Because unfortunately, they are the ones probably that are going to get in our way because they have a vested interest in staying in power and keeping the status quo. Whether they are in cahoots with foreign governments, we don't know, but they certainly want to stay in power and have done nothing to change things. So how do the people build this project in spite of their leadership?
Yeah, when you look at where Africa is today, and when you look at closely at where we need to go, everybody right now I was just in Mozambique the other day and speaking to Chief Kaduk there. I realized that even the traditional leaders have realized that we need to get together and begin to move forward. So, in this aspect, we are not saying we leave out these political leaders. We are saying we walk along with leaders, African leaders of goodwill. We've got a number of them on the continent of Africa who are morally and who have got a good passion, not only passion, but who've got a great vision for their countries. Such leaders must be embraced. But also, we need also to educate ourselves by saying, leaders that wish to stay in power forever must know that they are not the only ones. There are others who can carry on. There must be an issue of training. Now, the biggest challenge, as I've said, or which you have alluded to, is how will we do this without the economy? It is very important for us, more especially we from the African Institute of Leadership and Governance. We have been very emphatic on saying Africa needs to develop its African economy. How will we do that? The first thing that we do is that we work together with our political leaders. Let there be a political will that has got a mandate to drive the Africa's economy forward, the Africa's leadership forward. Those that will refuse, we make sure that let the Africans begin to voice out. Let the Africans begin to say we are able to govern ourselves so that we run away from being the puppets of the West. Let us develop the township economies. Let us encourage Africans to eat African. Let us encourage Africans to dress Africans. By doing that, we will see to it that it will be possible for us to groom and raise leaders of integrity and morality who can govern Africa to its destiny.
All right. Ms. Kandake, one of the challenges on the continent, sadly, is women are pretty subjugated. I know that as many as 70% of, as much as 70% of the agricultural activity on the continent is through the hands of women, and yet they own very little of the land. How can we get women more involved in meaningful and impactful change on the continent? Because I suppose without women in the front, we're probably not going to get far with this plan.
You are right, Peter. You're exactly right. I believe that it is time for the women to take their rightful place. And I see already many women who are speaking up, who are just fed up. And frankly, the women now are coming out as mothers, as grandmothers, aunts, sisters, and we are not afraid anymore to be at the top, be at a leader in our own right. Every country that you've seen who has made any level of success have made a way for women who have opened, they have opened doors for women. And that's really, to me, has been the key to their success. So if Africa wants to move, it's going to have to make room for the talents, the ability, the intuition, the organizational skills that women have. And so I believe that it's going to be the youth and the women that are going to be at the head of this transformation. And there is power in numbers. When we talk about how this transformation is going to happen, it's going to happen because the people are going to demand it. The youth today are fed up. They're frustrated. They're angry. It's one thing to not understand what you're going through and what's happening. But when you have an understanding of what's happening, then you get angry when you feel like there is no answers. And the Rapid Africa Plan is going to provide those answers. And they're going to the ones that's going to rally behind the plan is going to be the women and the youth. Thank you.
All right. And Professor Mubaiwa, in about 30 seconds, if you could just tell us what will happen next, and if people are interested in being part of modernizing Africa, how can they become agents?
Thank you very much. So we have landed the Rapid Africa Plan in Africa, and we've been about a month old in Africa now. And right now we have the Rapid Africa Plan board that is running this plan and landed in Africa. And we have already created another board that will hold the mandate and give it to an execution council that will then roll out the unity of Africa industrially and drive the process of the modernization of Africa, lifting Africa from a third world state to a first world state. Now, we have created, me and my brother, over the years, we've created a network that is very similar to Facebook. That our people have been having a problem with Facebook. So very soon it's going to be online and it's going to be announced. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, and all the other social media where people can look for us. Hashtag the Rapid Africa Plan and join there. It's important for us we have the plan, we have the technical people at the bottom, and we are creating the organization. What is left is the movement, is the people to unite behind the Rapid Africa Plan. And we have people that are running this Rapid Africa Plan movement and put all the system together so that we can work it. Because if we don't work our plan, we're going to work somebody else's plan.